Well, hi there. Hello, and welcome to the PitchGrid, the podcast that brings you news, insight, and analysis from both sides of the football world, the NFL and the world of soccer, including the EFL Championship, Premier League, and so much more. We have an incredibly packed episode today, ladies and gentlemen, including stuff around the NFL Championship Sunday that we got the Super Bowl matchup from. Lots of things to talk about from both Broncos, Patriots, and Rams, Seahawks. We're also going to go over the coaching carousel, all the new updates on the coaches that have been hired, the aftermath of some of those hires, and what I think could be huge potential, X factors in those hires, and also um the hires that have yet to be made, and where I think they could be headed in those directions. Also, we got a Hall of Fame snub from someone who is almost most definitely a Hall of Fame first time ballot, in my opinion. And then we head to the soccer world, where we saw a lot of crazy games happening in the EFL Championship, maybe some automatic promotion contenders that are going under the radar for most media circles. We saw a manager get sacked. We had a huge announcement about a preseason friendly coming up for a certain EFL Championship team. We had great games in the Premier League, including Man United scoring a thrilling win over the league leaders Arsenal, Bournemouth snatching a goal at the death to get 3 points over Liverpool and get them within shouting distance of European places. And we had a huge free agent drop onto the market in the final days of the transfer window. So without further ado, let's jump right on in and head grid side. Let us look at the AFC Championship game that was on Sunday afternoon in Denver, where it started out like a sunny, normal day and then turned into a fierce snow globe. This was a game that had a lot of things and a lot of intriguing factors to it. Early on, I think the Broncos threw their best punch. They went out and came out aggressive. Stidham had that great throw to Marvin Mims to get them inside the red zone, which then set up the touchdown to Courtland Sutton in the corner of the end zone that the Patriots just could not cover. And it got them on the board early, and the defense was playing very well, stifled the Patriots pretty consistently, and looked like the Patriots were going to have just an awful day on offense. But then two huge plays happened that really changed the course of this game and showed the limitations of Jarrett Stidham, and it kind of foreshadowed the ending of this game, to be honest. So the first play is on 4th and 1 inside the red zone. Jarrett Stidham a play is called where he has to roll out of the pocket and throw a short pass to convert on 4th and 1. But the Patriots are all over it. They sniff it out and almost pick it. I mean, it wouldn't have made much of a difference if it had been picked, but it still gave the Patriots back the ball and turned away what would have been 3 points, honestly. And it's another thing of in this playoffs where we just see people going with the analytics, going for the touchdown, the dagger. Really, it felt like if the Broncos were going to score a touchdown on that drive, it really felt like it could be game over with how the defense was playing, and the Patriots just were not doing a thing on offense. And so getting a touchdown probably would have been a huge dagger and honestly might have won them the game in retrospect. But at the same time, taking the points also, in retrospect, probably could have helped get the send this game into overtime. But they don't take the points, and, a theme of the playoffs is just, not taking points. And it has cost those teams that have gone for it and not gotten it. And they have missed points, and as a result, probably lost the game because they usually have been by the fine margins of 1 to 3 points. So it's very interesting because of the whole Ben Johnson, with the Lions going for it all the time. Brandon Staley really popularized it early before the Lions when he went for it all the time in LA with the Chargers. And now it's just kind of, almost automatic that they go for it. But I don't know. To me, you just take the points in that situation. I think there has to be a balance to when you go for it, when you take the points. And I think that Sean Payton was a little too aggressive, even though that is kind of a very Sean Payton coded move to go for it that early. The second play what that really just changed the momentum of this game and really gave the Patriots a lifeline was the backwards pass by Jared Stidham that the Patriots recovered. And it's on third down, I believe. He could have easily thrown away, and this is something that the Patriots did. They adjusted rather quickly after they saw what happened on the fourth down play. They adjusted and just sent all sorts of pressure into Stidham's face, and just he had nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, and just threw a backwards pass because he was just trying to get rid of it. And I mean, it was very slight, but it was a backwards pass. And I mean, I thought it could have been a fumble, ruled a fumble as well. But they pick it up, and because it was a backwards pass, they only get it at the spot of where the ball landed. So, and the Patriots take full advantage of it. They score a touchdown, tie the game at 7, and from there on out, it's just kind of a weird back and forth set of punches that are missed. And right before half, there was a huge sequence where the Broncos could have gotten 3 extra points, but Lutz misses a 50-plus yard field goal, and then it gives the Patriots a chance to go back and try to get themselves some points before the half. But they also miss a 60-plus yard field goal, and honestly, like I can see, that one because it's a 60-plus yard field goal. Not all kickers, even though more and more of the kickers these days are able to hit those kinds of field goals, but not all kickers can. Borealis, the kicker for the Patriots, he's just not that kind of kicker. Will Lutz is, so that's kind of why it was surprising that he missed the field goal that he did. I think he made a very similar field goal in the Bills game at one point to give the Broncos 3 points. So it's rather surprising considering that Lutz is rather accurate for that range. Even, like I think it was 3 or 4 out of 5 that he had hit from that range until that point. So really, not getting the points before half hurt the Broncos as well. Patriots do get 3 points right as the snow begins to come down in Denver. And by the time it is the end of the third quarter, early fourth, it is complete carnage where snow is just coming down. And I think it was very smart of the Patriots, whenever they got the ball, just to run it. They really didn't pass it much. They were very smart when they did pass it. And Drake May, even though he didn't have his best game in this game, was able to just throw it away and really just save possession for the Patriots if they could possibly hold on to it. They had a couple of huge plays where May scrambled, and his legs were a key part of the Patriots winning this game, honestly. And a pass to Mac Hollins that really set them up in the field goal range to get that winning kick. The Broncos just couldn't do anything, and when the snow came down, they moved it a couple of times, got into Patriots field territory, got down to I think around the 23 was the closest they got, and Lutz got the kick blocked, and that was really the Broncos' last good chance. And I've kind of felt like once that happened, unless they could get the passing game, and it didn't feel like they could get the passing game going once the snow hit, because the wind was just brutal on the ball in the pass game. It it felt like that it was over because really the pass game couldn't get going. The Broncos' run game really wasn't going anywhere compared to what the Patriots could do, kind of. And even then, it was limited too for the Patriots. So once Drake May scrambled the first down, the Patriots seal it and head to their 12th Super Bowl in franchise history. It was very well deserved, really well coached, in my opinion. Mike Vrabel adjusted early and reaped the results, I think, from that. Even if it wasn't the prettiest game, to me, I kind of felt like it was a good game in terms of tacticians and different conditions. And I really enjoyed this kind of game, even if it was ugly. I love a good defensive struggle myself. Um, a little and like I said earlier, the aggressiveness of Sean Payton failed him in a couple situations. Stidham tried to take the deep shots, very similar to what he did in the first half to Mims, but it was very well underthrown in the weather conditions, and it was picked off. And Stidham played pretty well, for being a backup quarterback. thrown into the situation last minute. He played pretty well overall. I do think once the second half got going, he really showed his limitations. Especially when the Patriots adjusted and sent all out blitzes on him, they really got him rattled. So you definitely saw the limitations, and there's of course talks that Bo Nix could have won this game. I don't know if anyone could have really in those conditions. Like, yes, Bo Nix could have absolutely been a huge game changer in terms of the quarterback run game. So that's definitely a possibility. But I don't know if his arm could have done any better in those conditions than it did with Stidham or with May. So I can see it, but I also can't see it. I think it really just depends how they would have called the game personally early on, and if they had called and gotten more points before the snow hit, that probably would have sealed the game for Denver. So it really came down to who could score the most points before the weather really hit. New England did. They are going to the Super Bowl. Mike Vrabel, just a little tidbit here. Vrabel becomes the first player turned coach for the same team to win a conference championship game and could become the first to do so and win a Super Bowl. So, Patriots legend, linebacker, and then he, of course, went to play for a couple of other teams before he retired and then became the coach of the Titans, and now he's the coach of his first team, the Patriots. And, really just, it's a great story for the Patriots. And, not many people won them here, but I think they deserved it. Um, as much as it's the evil empire and all that, you can't blame them. As much as people hate it, it's really cool to see kind of the arc, the storyline that got the Patriots to this point, and really just some smart team building, just a very Patriots esque type run, honestly, where they rely on their defense to do well. They're very fundamentally sound. They don't make a ton of mistakes. Their offense isn't like one that wows you, but still, it's enough. It does enough to get the job done, and that's kind of what Drake May did. Even though he didn't have his best game, he didn't cause turnovers, and that was kind of one of the keys I said for this game was Drake May can't turn it over like he did versus Houston, and he didn't against a very good Broncos defense. He was very smart, very savvy, and didn't turn it over. So kudos to him for that as well. But they really do need to have a faster start if they want to do well in the Super Bowl because they're facing the Seattle Seahawks, who, in a classic game of football in the NFC Championship game, a division rivalry at its best, the Seahawks really just took control of this game early on. It really felt like this could be a blowout early on when the Seahawks just went up 10-0, I believe it was, and it really felt like they just couldn't be stopped on offense, and they were just going up and down the field. The Rams' offense got off to a slow start, but they did come back. They were down 10-0, but then went on a 13-0 run to take the lead in Seattle. But then Darnold answered right back, got them a touchdown before half, and really it just became a game of back and forth. The key point here for me was when the Seahawks were able to recover a muffed punt, and that set them up easy for a score that put them up by 11. So when they were up 24-13, it really felt like unless the Rams could get two stops, this game might be over, and it kind of was because even though the Rams, Matthew Stafford was balling, he and Puka were really connecting well, and McVay showed his play calling prowess in this game. Really, just was on a heater and calling the offense, and they were dicing up this defense that has been so good for Seattle. It never felt like the game was out of reach until the Rams got finally did get a stop and down by 4 points, and we're driving into the red zone. And honestly, this is where I think the Rams kind of hit a wall. They went for four straight end zone plays instead of going for, I believe it was 2nd and 4, and they went for three straight end zone plays to come up empty on that possession. And I mean, I get why they don't take the points in this drive because they're down by 4. They would need another stop in order to get the ball back and go and kick a field goal. But still, you go for three straight end zone plays instead of doing what you had done the entire drive, which was just dicing and dunking and dinking down the field, making sure you got the first down, making sure you were still ahead of the chains. And I think they got a little aggressive there at that on that sequence. And honestly, it cost them because after that, the Seahawks just took the ball and never let the Rams see it again. And end of the game there, JSN was on another heater, cementing his legacy as one of the best receivers in this league. Sam Darnold showing his incredible possession progression as a quarterback in this league, even just from last year when, looking at him in the playoff game with Minnesota last year, he looked like a deer in the headlights against this same Rams team. And he did not look like he was ready for that stage. Coming into this year, though, he looks like a totally different quarterback, and he looked like an MVP, just matching Matthew Stafford, who I think should be the MVP this year, and matching him blow for blow, and really taking the game to him at home in Lumen Field, and just showing that he is one of the quarterbacks in this league that has not only taken a step past his Jets and Panthers days, but has also taken a step into one of the better quarterbacks in this league, honestly. And yeah, he just has had so much better accuracy. Feels so much more confident and in command of the offense. You do not feel like he's going to be rattled easily, even though he's given up the ball the most in this league with interceptions and fumbles. Like, he still comes back confident, and I think that's a huge, huge bit of growth for him in that category, and has really helped propel Seattle to be one of the best teams, and probably the best team in these playoffs this year. And honestly, coming into this Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl, it shows just how amazing this team is and how well rounded it is that they have a quarterback. Like Geno Smith, when he was the quarterback for Seattle, you felt like it was okay, but they had some limitations. With Darnold, it doesn't feel like they have limitations. They don't have the running aspect as much with Darnold. It's much more of a pass heavy offense, but they rely on the run game too with K9, Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker's really been able to take the pressure off Darnold, and a good balanced offense with a great defense. It's just a recipe for success and feels very like a 2013 type Seahawks team, but better because it feels like a much more dynamic offense with a much more dynamic wide receiver one. Whereas in 2013, it really didn't feel like the Seahawks had a wide receiver one. It was just a team effort on that wide receiver room. And, you know, you have to give kudos to Mike McDonald and his coaching staff with Clint Kubiak for just really calling a great game. Kudos to the Rams, they got here, and the Broncos too. Like the Broncos, they had a great season. Nothing to hang their heads over. Still an incredible defense, one of the best in the game. It would have been so much fun to see them and the Seahawks go head to head, but you know, unfortunately, they just got a bad injury at the wrong time. Just 2 plays before winning the game against Buffalo, they lose Bo Nix, and it cost them the season. And who knows what would have happened if Bo was healthy. But this is still an incredible season for Denver, and nothing to hang their heads over. Could Sean Payton probably be a little less aggressive on in certain situations, yes, but otherwise, like, this team is very promising, and as long as they keep up where they are this year and Bo continues to grow and progress in his development, I don't see why they can't still be a contender in the AFC. The Rams, like, they have nothing to be ashamed of either. They just ran into a great team in Seattle. Matthew Stafford matched blow for blow with Darnold and showed why he's the MVP. He just couldn't really get that one drive going, and he faced a great defense and played really well. Of course, this is the third time he's played this team, but still, like, nothing, bad about Stafford. A ring would have really cemented his status as a Hall of Famer, but he really, truly is showing he's one of the better quarterbacks of our generation, and his rebound with McVay in LA has been something to behold. And this Rams defense, it's young, but they'll get better, and that's the scary part of it. So we're going to get to in a minute also, but they're going to retain some of their coaching staff. And that's huge for them, I think, coming into the next year if Matthew Stafford wants to come back. And I think he probably will for at least one more year to try to chase a ring. So, yeah, congratulations to the Seahawks and Patriots. Nothing to hang their heads over for the Rams and Broncos. Uh, Another bit of tidbit from the NFC Championship game. Sam Darnold is actually the first USC quarterback to go to and start in the Super Bowl. So that's pretty cool that Darnold's able to do that. And he's the first of his draft class, the 2018 draft class, which includes Josh Allen, Lamar, and Baker to go to the Super Bowl. Which is crazy to think about because like Lamar and Josh have been just such elite talents that now it feels crazy to say that they aren't in the Super Bowl. So yeah, Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl should be a great game. I think two good defenses. Patriots defense is not as nearly as good as the Seahawks, but they're good enough. Like if they can get a couple of stops, and if the Patriots offense can not get off to a slow start, this could be a good game like the 2014 Super Bowl was. I really hope we get that kind of a game again because that was so much fun. This is a very Patriots-esque type run, like I said earlier. It feels very much like the Belichick Brady teams of old, where they have a good defense, a good enough defense. They feel like an underdog, and I think they were underdog in the 2014 Super Bowl. Um, and they have an offense that is just good enough. They have a collection of players that will, bring themselves above the norm and will play well. And they have Josh McDaniels back. He's coordinating this offense again. Like, I would not be shocked with 2 weeks if they come up with something crazy for this game and really have a good game plan for the Seahawks defense. It should be a very interesting game, and we'll break it down as we get closer to that game. But it's going to be so much fun, and I'm kind of excited to have a 2014 rematch. It's what I was hoping would happen, and it did. 2013 rematch would not have hurt either, but still, I kind of am excited for this one. All right, let's head to the coaching carousel real quick. We had a few hires actually hit down this last week, including Jesse Minter, who was hired by the Baltimore Ravens over the last weekend. Very Ravens hire, in my opinion, former Raven coach, I believe, and he was the former defensive coordinator for the LA Chargers. Made them a scary defensive unit this year, and one that you did not want to mess with. uh, I think it's a good hire personally, as long as he makes the right hires in certain areas for the offense to help maximize Lamar Jackson's talents. I think he can really build off of the culture that John Harbaugh built there in Baltimore. It just was need a little bit of change, and Jesse Minter might be the exact thing they need. A little bit less of a players coach. He might be more of we don't know exactly what he's going to be like because he has no head coaching experience in the NFL. But you know, this is he's here to take advantage of a Ravens defense. Bring them back to a kind of typical Ravens mentality: defense first, special teams, and the offense just rides the coattails of the defense and does just enough. Even though they have the weapons nowadays with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to make them a scary unit on offense. So but it's definitely a hire to bring back a Ravens type identity to the situation where they had kind of lost the identity of defense that the Ravens are so well known for in their history. And if they can get that kind of defense back, that's all they really need to kind of propel themselves back into a top contender in the AFC. Mike McCarthy got hired by Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh native. It feels like a very Rooney type hire. Getting the Pittsburgh local and trying to get a very Tomlin esque culture hire. The standard is the standard. He's just Tomlin, but the offensive version of Tomlin. Tomlin's much more the defensive guru. The question I have for this hire is, was he meant to lure Aaron Rodgers back? Because, like, we know from quotes earlier that Rodgers once would only play for two coaches if he were to come back this next season, and that one then would be Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy has also said he would not mind working with Rodgers, so we could have a reunion of old Green Bay um, teammates, you could say. So it would, be a perfect reunion that seems to be, a good thing for all parties. And if Rodgers does still decide to retire, uh, could he be there just on a short-term development? Could McCarthy be there just to help mentor and develop Will Howard into quarterback one for the Steelers? Because honestly, you're not gonna. I don't think he's there to help make Mason Rudolph the starting quarterback should Aaron Rodgers retire. I think, if Rodgers were to retire, I do think it would be much more Will Howard takes the reins. If not at the start of the season, probably mid-season, just to kind of get get his feet a little wet. And then he maybe gets the full start next year. 2 years from now, I should say. But right now, I wonder if this is going to be a short-term hire, because that's kind of what most people thought were like when McCarthy was linked to Tennessee, kind of that he would just be a short-term, get the people off the ground. Now, of course, this is a Steelers organization that is very focused on one thing, and that's winning. They want to win. They want to be a standard in the NFL. They feel like they are one of the more iconic franchises in the NFL, which they are. They are tied for the most Super Bowls in the league, for all time. Super Bowl wins in the league, and they want to continue to be the elite franchise of the NFL. The question with McCarthy is if he can turn the culture that has been with the Steelers for a while has kind of been rotting under the surface with Tomlin. Just a very stale culture where the players take over, and Tomlin's just a yes man at this point. Can McCarthy take charge and make sure that this is a locker room that isn't ruled by the players exclusively? I think that's a huge ask, but we'll have to see. Again, it's going to depend on a lot of the staff hires. Joe Brady was hired by the Buffalo Bills. Now, of course, this brings a lot of continuity back into the Bills organization. This is the offense that Josh Allen has had for most of his career, so it's not going to be much of a stretch now that Brady is staying in Buffalo. I have concerns with this hire that it's going to be a yes man hire. That after the whole debacle, the press conference last week, and how McDermott was fired, that Brady is much more of a yes man. That's why the Bagulas hired him. They really didn't take a long look at many coaches outside of Brady. It felt like also the hires that they were looking at, like Brian Daboll, for example, were much more guys that have been in Buffalo before, and guys, that have connections to the area, connections to the team, connections to Josh Allen. Of course, you want guys that have connections with Josh Allen because he's your star. He's the star player on that team. But this feels much more like a yes man hire because he's being promoted from inside. The Bagulas don't want to shake up the organization much, and considering how you know McDermott's tenure ended, and it felt, and the reporting around it, how Brandon Beane really wanted McDermott gone, this might have been the guy that Brandon Beane wanted in the end to be the coach. And yeah, it feels very messy. It could very much work out. I just have some doubts around it. And I'm very willing to be proven wrong because this is a franchise that deserves to win and deserves to have, success. So, it could work out. I'm just a little skeptical of it right now, and kind of, it feels kind of shady to me. The hire that has gotten the most drama, though, would have to be, of course, the Cleveland Browns. Because why wouldn't they be, like, top of the drama list? Let's be honest. That is kind of a very Browns type move. They hired Todd Monken yesterday. A very good move. I'm recording this on Thursday, the day after Todd Monken gets hired. And it was a very unexpected move because Todd Monken was considered to be on the outer circle, considering that the Browns were. It felt like the Browns were leaning towards Nate Scheelhaase, the offensive coordinator for the Rams, and that Monken was just kind of on the outer circles because Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, was also considered a heavy favorite. Um, However, Monken was hired, and reporting after the announcement of that was mentioning that one of the key factors in hiring Monken and why a lot of coaches didn't work out for the Browns was because the Browns really were wanting someone who would work with Jim Schwartz. And it makes sense. On paper, it really does make sense. You want someone who can work with a guy who has really turned this Browns defense into one of the better defenses in the league. They have a lot of good pieces. They, of course, have the all-time NFL sack leader in the season, Myles Garrett. They have, Denzel Ward. They have some good pieces on that defense, and Jim Schwartz has been a huge reason why that Browns defense has been so good. However, Jim Schwartz doesn't see it the same way because he threw a temper tantrum and has said he's going to be out. He's not coming back. And reports are suggesting that he is willing to make this a very messy breakup. And yeah, this is a mess now. And a lot of people are blaming the Browns and saying, oh, this is typical Browns. They're throwing themselves into this situation. I don't think this is on the Browns, in my opinion. I think this is very much more of this is on Schwartz. Yes, unless he had very clear assurances behind closed doors, and we don't know, he very well might have. But unless he had a very clear assurances from the Browns ownership, and general manager, I think that Jim Schwartz had no right to assume that he was going to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. Because that's very, in my opinion, it's a little arrogant to assume that he is absolutely going to be the coach just because he's the inside guy who has been there a long time. And yes, he's paid his dues. He's made the defense work and gotten a tune out of them despite the offense, crapping the bed every single time. But still, and this also reporting is suggesting that it's very much a conflict between the general manager and Jimmy Haslam, the owner. That the general manager wanted Sheila Hassa from the Rams, but the owner really, really wanted Schwartz to stay on the staff, and I don't blame him. Yes, Jimmy Haslam is one of the worst owners in this league. Don't get me wrong; he is a very he's a top defensive coordinator, and he's shown that this year. The problem is when your owner and your general manager aren't in sync, you're going to get this kind of situation, and the owner decided to override the GM and hire Todd Monken, who would work with Schwartz. Now, Schwartz is not going to do that because reasons. I don't think it's very smart, in my opinion, and it's really going to have a ripple effect that we'll get to in a second. But in my opinion, this is more on Schwartz than the Browns for assuming that he's going to have this job regardless. And you can't assume that in an interviewing process. It's like this. If I were to go into Walmart, I've been working at Walmart for let's say 5 years. I assume I'm going to have this promotion to, floor manager, right? I'm one of the three candidates left, and I assume that because I've been working for 5 years, I'm going to be, the automatic hire for this position. I can't complain when they decide to hire a guy who has a lot of experience and on the others in different areas that I don't have expertise in, but is also paid his dues in other respects in other areas of Walmart, corporate and stuff like that, and they hire someone else. No one would expect that of anyone in any other industry to assume that they can just get the job, and then when the consequences are they don't get the job, they can just flip out. I don't think that's I don't think you can say, oh, it's Walmart's fault that they're having this problem. Oh, look, typical Walmart, they don't hire the right people. No, it's Jim Schwartz just didn't want he wanted the job, and I don't blame him. I mean, Schwartz hasn't had a job since the '08 Lions, I believe it was. And yeah, I don't blame him for wanting to be a head coach again. But obviously, the Browns felt like had to go in a different direction. They really want the offense to be better, and they wanted to be more of a balanced organization, and I can't blame them. You have Shedeur Sanders, you have Dylan Gabriel, both young quarterbacks to develop. Todd Monken can do that. I think this is a solid hire for the Browns. It would have been even better if Schwartz had stayed. But now, because of this, there is going to be a ripple effect, ladies and gentlemen. There is going to be probably some players that leave the Browns organization and leave with Schwartz. And like I said earlier, he's willing to make this ugly, according to reporting. So, Myles Garrett could, ask for a trade. Denzel Ward, a lot of their good players could leave with Schwartz, and that leaves the Browns in a worse position. And you cannot blame the Browns for hiring who they think is the best guy for the job. Yes, you should be more in sync as a manager, a general manager, and an owner. But at the same time, the general manager, I feel like the requirements that we were hearing early, like they were like the general manager wanted the candidates to write an essay, right? Like, I can't blame Haslam for, like, stepping in, like, okay, these requirements are ridiculous. We're getting dragged through the mud by, media and by people in general online for having these stupid requirements to, hire our coaches. So I'm just going to step in. I'm going to make the choice I think is the right choice. And, have these certain criteria for these coaches to have. And when, he does that, you cannot honestly expect the Browns to be responsible for the actions of Jim Schwartz, who is a pretty loose cannon, let's say that. We all know that Jim Schwartz is a kind of a loose cannon. He and Greg Williams, I think, are very similar in my opinion. So, yeah, I just think this is just a very messy situation that a lot of people are putting on the Browns and shouldn't be putting on the Browns. Yes, the Browns do a lot of stupid stuff. They have done a lot of stupid stuff, and they will probably continue to do stupid stuff. But this is not one of those stupid things, in my opinion. Um, right now, the two remaining coaching positions available are the Raiders and the Cardinals. Right now, there's Diana Rossini reported this morning actually that both teams have an unknown candidate coming in to interview. Now, who that is, we don't know. Obviously, it's unknown. But right now, Davis Webb has had two interviews with the Raiders. The Cardinals are leaning more towards Mike LaFleur and or Vance Joseph right now after the Jaguars defensive coordinator Campanelli has decided he was going to stay in Jacksonville. Him and Udinsky, the offensive coordinator, who was also a very hot candidate in coaching circles, decided to stay in Jacksonville for another year. Nate Schieldhausen, after he was told yesterday by the Browns that they were looking at a different direction, has decided he's going to stay with the Rams for another year and look for a coaching job next year, which I think is very smart in my opinion. Stay under McVay for another year. I get that. Clint Kubiak is still going to be a candidate, a very hot candidate for the two teams. I think um, he's been much more linked to the Raiders job than with the Cardinals. I would not be shocked if the Cardinals are biding their time and waiting until after the Super Bowl to interview and strike on that front. But they seem to be leaning more towards a defensive minded type coach, which I get because they have a lot of talent on that defense. But they would need to get the offensive coordinator hire precisely right, like Robert Saleh has in Tennessee, hiring Brian Daboll. So you know, it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. I think right now we're getting close to knowing who they might hire these two franchises, but we're still kind of up in the air, and I think it's because Clint Kubiak is going to be a factor, despite the fact that he very well might stay now that we have most of our coaching hires solved. But it's still, I think he's going to be a huge factor in this. Let's move on to the news about Bill Belichick because that was a huge point of topic the last few days. It came out a couple days ago that Bill Belichick was snubbed by the Hall of Fame voters to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He did not get the necessary 40 votes to get into the Hall of Fame, and Eli Manning also didn't get in as well. That had been a conversation looming since last year, I believe. And but with Belichick, it was rumored that Bill Polian was rumored to be one of the big people against Belichick getting into the Hall of Fame because of things like Spygate and Deflategate, which um, is kind of ironic. We'll get into that in a second. But Polian was interviewed, and he says he doesn't remember not voting for Bill uh, Belichick, um, and that he says he probably would have voted Bill Belichick, and that he did vote for him, and that Bill deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Honestly, it feels kind of sus that he would talk like that, and that he doesn't remember slash he did vote for him. If that feels like he's covering his tracks a bit, um, because that's two different reports now. Of course, reporting can obviously be wrong. People can obviously hear things that are wrong when they're being told by their sources or whatever. But the Hall of Fame came out yesterday with a statement saying that media voters, if they were influenced by outside bias or anything like that, could be kicked off the committee. So that has me thinking that the Hall of Fame thinks it's not Polian specifically, that it's more media or outside influence. And that is a very interesting thing to think about because, of course, nowadays we know that voting for the Hall of Fame has become a very political process in terms, not in terms of like, the geopolitical sphere, but more people in the NFL world are very political. They have connections. They will vote for their connections and not usually with the stats. And, we've seen a lot of results lately that have shown that some guys who we think would get into the Hall of Fame, like first ballot, aren't. And, this is a prime example of that as well. Obviously, Belichick deserves to be in. He has one of the best coaching resumes of all time. He has 8 Super Bowls, 2 as an assistant, 6 as a head coach, all-time leader in wins, all-time leader in playoff wins, one of the best to ever do it, one of the best defensive minds to ever do it in the NFL. He has one of the more colorful coaching trees that hasn't always worked out, but he led this Patriots team to be one of the best dynasties the NFL has ever seen and probably ever will see. Um, Unless the Chiefs start, getting back on the trail again. But right now, as of right now, the Patriots have the best dynasty of all time, and it honestly doesn't look like that could be broken anytime soon because it's such a hard thing to do. What Bill Belichick did with the Patriots in the course of about 19, 20 years. So yeah, I I am shocked he didn't get in first ballot. He should get in next year. If he doesn't get in this year, he will get in next year. If he doesn't, that is a crime. And I get the frustration that people have with it. The Spygate thing, he's paid his dues on that. Deflategate, let's be honest, the Colts can really suck eggs on that one because they were already down pretty bad when um, in that game when it was found out, and really they weren't playing that good. I mean, they got trounced 42-7, I believe it was, and it never was a close game. So I don't know why Bill Polian and company were really in arms about that one. Yes, it's a cheating, but at the same time, like it never really affected them besides losing that game, which they were going to anyways. Let's be honest. I don't think anyone believed that team was going to beat the Patriots. Um, that year. Ironically, it was 2014, the year the Patriots beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Yeah, this is Bill Polian and Tony Dungy. If that is true, they're the ones leading the charge against it. That makes me lose a little bit of respect, and I have a lot of respect for Tony Dungy, and what he has done in this league, and the stuff he has done to help mentor people and be a good coach and a good person overall. So, I hope it's not the case, but I wouldn't be shocked either because Bill Polian is kind of a person who holds a grudge. So, we'll have to see, but it's still a very interesting situation in that regard. And with that, let's head pitch side, and talk about some of the things in the soccer world. Let's start with the EFL Championship. We had an incredible round of games this last week. We had Ipswich Town losing at Sheffield United 3-1, and it was a game that really you thought, oh, Ipswich are going to keep cruising, but Chris Wilder's really turned this Sheffield United team around and really has taken them past the point of where they were floundering in the relegation zone. Didn't look like they were good. And he's really turned them around, and they look like a much improved side compared to where they were at the beginning of the season. And Ipswich, they are, they're in a bit of a wobble, but, it's not a huge wobble. But with that loss, they go 5 points behind Middlesbrough, who had an absolute time of their lives. They thrashed Preston North End at the Riverside 4-0 to go 5 points clear of Ipswich Town and Hull City, who are both on 50 points. And it was an absolute domination for Middlesbrough. They never looked like they got out of second gear, really. Preston were just horrible in a lot of aspects. They just couldn't get anything going after the first 5 minutes. They had a red card as well, which got them down to 10 men. And they had to play Ipswich on Saturday, so that's a huge, huge game. They'll be out with one of their best players. And, this is an Ipswich team that has improved with some signings, including Anis Mehmeti from Bristol City, who is one of the better number 10s or attacking midfielders in the championship. So it's a huge sign for them. How he's going to fit in, I don't know exactly, because the Ipswich just has a crowd of number 10 players that they could put into that position. And, Marcelino Nunez is obviously going to be the starter, but he's been injured. So that's going to be very interesting to see when he comes back, where Mehmeti goes. But this is a Ipswich team that is really gunning for promotion. They are trying to sign all the players they can to make sure that no one else gets them. And it's going to be a very interesting last few days of the transfer window. But yeah, it was very curious to see them fall to Sheffield United. You thought it could happen. You thought Sheffield United could give them a game because of how they've improved since the beginning of the year, but you didn't know because Ipswich have been so clinical lately. I think they were on a 4-game win streak before last Saturday, so it was kind of shocking to see them fall. It Everyone thought Preston was going to give Middlesbrough a tough game, and yet they just swept them aside 4-0. You know, it just shows how much of a tactician Kim Hellberg was, and he really showed his tactical chops in this game. He really just Preston did not know what hit them. They really didn't. Um, Kim Hellberg has such a fluctuating tactical system. It's not really a formation. He really doesn't have a specific formation. It looks like a 4-2-2-2, but it really feels like it changes depending on how the game is going. So it could go anywhere from like a 4-2-3-1, it could go to a 4-3-2-1, it go to 5 at the back. It just really doesn't matter because now that Middlesbrough are starting to get players back from injury, they have a lot more squad depth, and it's really starting to show because they're starting to sweep teams away. And look, they're on the top of the form table with 4 straight wins. This is not going to be, easy to take them off their tick if they keep going like this. Coventry, speaking of the the automatic promotion race, they lost to Norwich City on Monday, who needed this win, are much improved. And you kind of thought this could be a game where Coventry were set back a bit after 2 impressive wins against Millwall and Leicester City. But you didn't expect it to kind of be in the way it happened because, they went up 1-0, Coventry did, and it looked like, okay, this is going to be a typical Coventry City game where they just, they aren't looking convincing, but they're still going to win. They're still going to scrape this over the line. Except Norwich get the goals 30 seconds into the second half, tie this game up, and then a Liam Kitching error where he just sits on the ball for way too long. And Norwich City pounce, they go on the counter, and it's a devastating counter. And Ali Ahmed puts it past Rushworth to give Norwich the lead 2-1. And after that, Coventry just didn't look like they could do anything, offensively or defensively. Norwich were just so devastating on the counter, and it felt like they were just the much better side. Norwich were able to get a lot of joy on the wings, and Ali Ahmed was such a critical piece when he was on that pitch. Um, and honestly, Ali Ahmed just is showing how much of a good pipeline the MLS Championship is. This is Ali Ahmed was a guy on an MLS Cup appearance side. He with his Vancouver Whitecaps in the MLS just a few months ago, and now he's here at Norwich City and looking like one of their best players right now. And it's so cool to see. You have quite a few MLS players in the league right now. You have Patrick Agyemang with Derby County. You have Ian Morris and Adelson Malanda from Middlesbrough who are from the MLS as well. You have had several players go from the Championship to MLS, and including the whole Josh Sargent saga going on right now, which still hasn't had a resolution. And you're just seeing such a good pipeline between these two leagues, and it shows how much of quality the MLS has picked up in the last few years to have players go seamlessly into the championship and play well. And also, it shows how good of a league it is comparatively where they were a few years ago, um, in terms of overall quality and entertainment and good players. And I don't think you a few years ago would have said an MLS player could seamlessly go to what I think is still the better league, the EFL Championship, and fit seamlessly into like a top contending side like Middlesbrough or like a team in Norwich who really are and should be a top six side and just haven't been able to until Philippe Clermont came into the league and took over Norwich. And really, Clermont needs a lot of credit for turning this Norwich City team around. Such a good team, and they look so good on Monday, and so clinical. And of course, that can obviously be helped because Coventry looked just as bad. They did not look like the league leaders in this game. They looked so fragile defensively. Offensively, they couldn't get a ton going. They were like lumping in crosses. And it kind of looked like what Middlesbrough have had with Carrick lately. Um, Last couple of years where they were just lumping crosses into the box and hoping that someone would latch on and score a goal. They're not scoring bucket loads like they were at the beginning of the year, and they're struggling really to put teams away. And they're still doing it to their credit for the most part. They just aren't doing it as consistently or as thoroughly as they were at the beginning of the year. And yes, I still think that this is a Coventry side that absolutely should and get promoted. If they don't, it is crime that Frank Lampard would bottle that. Um, and honestly, might need to be like a serious discussion if they do bottle it. But right now, they're still the league leaders. They're only 3 points ahead of Middlesbrough and 8 clear of Ipswich and Hull right now for automatic promotion. And yes, this automatic promotion race is absolutely on. And you can include Millwall in this too. I think they're only 9 points clear of Coventry. They're 6 points clear of They're behind Middlesbrough. So they got a lot of ground to cover. But Millwall are still in this race as well. After a 4-0 thrashing of Charlton, their London rivals, where they looked absolutely brilliant. Now, obviously, you could say that is because Charlton are just that bad or in a relegation fight, and I would kind of agree with that. You know, Preston, it felt a little more shocking to me because Preston have been in the playoff race for so long this year and have looked so good for so long that and this is a Preston team that drew with Middlesbrough at the beginning of the season in a thrilling game at Deepdale, and yet they looked like nothing like the team that they have the most of the year when they went to the Riverside last Saturday. So yeah, this is a very intriguing automatic promotion race in my opinion. Let's look at Oxford United as well. They got a win over Leicester City, 2-1 at the King Power Stadium. Matt Bloomfield has now gotten 5 points out of 3 games, 2 draws and a win, which is massive for Oxford United's chances of staying up in the championship. I believe they are only 3 or 4 points away from safety now, which is huge for them and really gives them a lot of hope in terms of being able to maybe do what they can to stay up. Especially if Bloomfield keeps this new manager bounce going. Leicester City, it's a disaster. Like, I know this has been talked about a lot, and it still hasn't happened yet. But Leicester City do have this points deduction still looming over their head from last season that they could get at any moment, and the rumored total is still 9 points. They are 9 points above the. They're still 9 points above the relegation zone. Do we think that Leicester City is going to maybe get relegated? Should they get this points deduction? If they do, it's a crime on the Leicester City board that they were very meh these last couple of transfer windows. Leicester still, I don't think, have a signing in the January window, and which is incredible considering this is a team that just came down from the Premier League. And yes, they hired Marti Cifuentes. he has been sacked this last weekend. So, and this was a hire that, you kind of felt meh about. Like, QPR, really, he made them better for a period, but then they kind of just fell off at the end of his tenure there at QPR. The wheels came off, really. And then, now they come back, and honestly, they have looked Leicester has not looked like the team we expected them to be when they came down from the Premier League. We thought, everyone thought they would probably, get top six, even with the point deduction, because they have those quality of players in their squad with Abdul Fatawu, Patson Daka, your likes of Jordan Ayew, Vestergaard, and Skip, and Jordan James, and all sorts of great players that they've had in the Premier League for so long, highlighted by Abdul Fatawu, obviously. But my word, it's just a mess right now, and you really have to blame the board and the ownership of Leicester City right now, because this is a ownership that really should be aggressive with the kind of team they have right now, and yet they are being so casual about it. And listening to the interview with their primary owner, who came over to England this last week, and he did an interview um, because he came over to help with the sacking of Cifuentes. You really don't have a ton of hope, I think, if you're a Leicester City fan, and it feels like um, a lot of things are looming over your head right now because, like I said, you still don't have a signing in the transfer window, which only has now, as we're recording on Thursday, only has 4 days left, and that's 1 p.m. our time, or 7 p.m. their time in England, is the deadline to sign anybody, and Leicester City have just done nothing. And you're looking at teams like Wrexham and Birmingham City and Ipswich and Middlesbrough and Coventry are looking to spend and splash their cash. You would think that Southampton and Leicester and um, would be among those teams, but they are not, and it's just so shocking to see. Um, yeah, it's just Leicester is a very intriguing situation right now. Um, we also saw West Brom help their chances of staying up by getting a late equalizer in the last kick of the game with Dan Ballard, I believe it was. Not Dan Ballard. Trey Hume. Trey Hume. What am I saying? Dan Ballard's still with Sunderland in the Prem. Um, but they got a late equalizer with Trey Hume to snatch a point against Derby County at Pride Park. Um, it was very lucky, I think, because it just got over the line, and before Zeta Strong palmed it out of the goal mouth, and it was given. But it's a huge. It could be a massive point in terms of helping West Brom stay out of the relegation fight. Um, you know, now we're seeing with also let's go to Marti Cifuentes QPR also, by the way, real quick, because they had his former club in QPR had a thrilling game with Wrexham with a potential spot in the playoff places on the line in this game. And QPR took a 2-0 lead late into the game, and 2-1 lead, I should say, late into the game. And it looked like they were going to win and pull out this game, and Wrexham were just going to have another dropped points scenario. But instead, they get 2 goals late in stoppage time to take a 3-2 win and sneak themselves into the playoff places for the first time. Are they truly is this Wrexham team really truly a playoff contending team? I think so. I think they're still a year away, but they'll definitely be in and around the playoff discussion, I think, for the rest of the season. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it. I think there's a lot of other quality teams like Stoke and Birmingham also is right on their heels as well. Um, there are other teams I think that can make a much better push at this than Wrexham. They have a lot of issues on the back line in particular. I think they need to shore up before really becoming a contender. Um, are they truly a Hollywood tale? A lot of people are asking this right now. Are they truly a Hollywood tale or the product of their money that they have with the ownership structure that they have? It's very much, I think, a case of both. They are really a team that has come up and soared from non-league into the championship in a span of only a few years and have looked really decent this year for a championship side. They started slow, but now they're looking like a proper championship side. and look like they will. And they're of course going to stay up. I don't think that's a question now. Um, but yeah, this is a Wrexham team that has the ownership group to splash the cash. I mean, goodness, they're looking at a 15 million plus rated striker. That would need like 15 million pounds to buy him off of France. I mean, that's not something normal championship clubs can do, unless you're really contending for automatic promotion. And Wrexham aren't doing that right now. So it's It shows how much of a um, advantage the finances that Wrexham and Birmingham have to be able to secure that kind of money and that kind of those kinds of moves. So it's definitely a bit of both. I think that Wrexham are very much a tale of like magic, where like you don't really normally see this kind of rise unless you're playing like FM or something like that. So it's a very fascinating story. I kind of can't wait to see the documentary when this season ends. We still have 17 games to go, but it's a long way and a lot of football's yet to be played. For Wrexham right now, they are in the playoff places for sure. Um, I want to go over this real quick because this has started to become a discussion here. When you look at a lot of, you know, other when you look on social media, Hull, Millwall, and Boro are kind of not being really talked about in terms of championship automatic promotion contenders. Ipswich and Coventry are kind of like the ones that Sky Sports or those who cover it, like CBS Sports here in the States, when it comes to the automatic promotion race. Um, to me, these whole Millwall and Boro are totally going under the radar a little bit, just because these are not the guys that Ipswich. Of course, they're the automatic promotion guys. They were a favorite at the beginning of the year to win the title, and they just came back from the Premier League, and of course they have all the firepower, all the money to be able to spend and push themselves into the top of the table because of their being a Premier League side from last year. And then you have Coventry City, who have Frank Lampard, who were such a Cinderella story last year, from going from the relegation places to the playoff places and barely missing out on the playoff final after a thrilling 3-game series with Sunderland in the playoff semis. So, yeah, I mean, Coventry, of course, they're a great story. Like, they have a lot of great players, and Haji Wright and Jack Rodoni and Bobby Thomas, and a lot of good players like Brandon Thomas Asante and Ephraim Mason Clark. All great players in their own right. Coventry has such a great story last year in particular. Um, the thing is, Hull, Millwall, and Borough also deserve to be in this discussion, and are right now because they played well. They have all played well. Millwall's much more their typical Millwall gritty defensive side that just play well and don't make a ton of mistakes. Hull is very much the exciting team. They've gone from, you know, being under a transfer embargo at the beginning of the season. Not many, including myself, thought they would be anywhere in the top 6 race, let alone the automatic promotion race, and thought they would struggle under Jurkerovic, the new coach from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And yet here they are scoring tons of goals. They're also conceding a ton, but they are scoring a ton of goals and look like a real threat in a lot of games when they're playing. And they have a game in hand on Middlesbrough, who is second at the table right now. And of course, Borough, they've been in the top 3 consistently all season, and yet they're kind of still there. They're just there. I think people all year have expected them to fall off. um, they remind me of last year's Sunderland in a lot of ways. You know, people that keep expecting them to fall off, they're gonna fall wobble. They're gonna, when's typical Borough gonna happen? Are they, you know, are they going to be able to sustain what they have had under Edwards and now under Helberg? Um, you know, that's the question. And if Helberg can continue this on, and if this keeps up, and they're playing like a automatic promotion side right now, Arborough, and so are Hull in a lot of ways. I think you can't take either of those teams for granted. You can't take Millwall for granted either. They're a team that are just plugging away, and like I said earlier, they're only 6 points clear of second. They're behind in second place, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. That's only 2 games if Borough were to slip up. So it's just a question of how this is going to end. You have a lot of games against each other that's going to happen. Boro have Millwall, Coventry, and Ipswich left, and Hull I think has Ipswich and Coventry still to play, and I think uh, Millwall still has all three of the top. So it's going to be a fun automatic promotion race, I think, and I don't think you can take away from one club or the other just because they're not the typical contenders, or you would think. Coventry have been up there. They looked like they were going to run away with it the whole for most of this year until recently. So as as much as Coventry and Ipswich are very much in that promotion race, you cannot discount Hull, Millwall, or Middlesbrough, because that would just be silly to do, because they have all played well in their own unique way. And I think this is going to be one of the best promotion races we've had in the EFL Championship for some time. Um, let's head to Wrexham again. They announced they had a scheduled preseason friendly with Wisła Krakow from Poland. They announced it yesterday. They're also in talks with Man United for a friendly in one of the Nordic countries. Honestly, this is I'm not shocked that they're doing this. It's a very PR type move to help, get some PR going for Wrexham, and they're trying to really push for this. They're of course trying to still spend in the January transfer window. They're trying to get up to the Premier League. That is the goal for Wrexham. I would not be shocked if not this year, they're trying to go for it next year. Um, I think they're really, really expecting that they can do this, and these types of friendlies are going to really get them on the map and get people thinking about them and rooting for them and get the brand exposure out there. They're not rumored to be going to the States yet. There had been talk about like a Birmingham Wrexham friendly, I think, at one point, but I don't know if that's going to happen this year or next year. It's just a very interesting move by Wrexham, considering where they are in terms of the table, and the ownership group that they have with Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhaney, two prominent media kind of guys, actors, and they're well known, and they're using their celebrity to the best of their ability. And like I said earlier, it's a bit of both. Like, yes, you have these celebrities owning the club, and more celebrities are owning championship clubs. And so it's becoming less and less of the local fan guy who loves the club, bought the club, like Steve Gibson, of Middlesbrough, or Doug King of Coventry, you know, or something like that. It's not exactly that way anymore. It's become much more, you see Snoop Dogg owning Swansea City now, and Tom Brady with Birmingham City, and it's becoming much more of an investment type of league. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing either to get your brand out there. I think it annoys championship clubs and lower league clubs, because Wrexham have really just started to tout their superiority over everyone else, and I think a little bit it's annoying. It can be, because these are clubs that have plied their trade in the championship for so long, and yet Wrexham comes in and they think they're just better, and in a lot of ways they've spent the money to say they are better, but are they? And right now on the pitch, it's indeterminate right now, but right now they're in a good spot to show that they can contend for the Premier League. And it might be a year off yet, but still, it's it's a possibility. And I think getting a friendly like against Krakow is a good start to kind of just gauge how good they are, and that's not a bad thing either. Like Man United as well, get those kind of friendlies in, helps get your squads in competition. So that's not a bad thing at all. Let's turn to the Premier League real quick. Man United, they played Arsenal over the weekend and had a thrilling 3-2 win. They had to come back from being 1-0 down, but they did that pretty quickly off a costly mistake, and equalized. And then Jeremy Dorgu had a brilliant a goal from outside the box. And then Mateus Cunha in the last minute, after an equalizer by Martinelli, he Cunha got them the winner in the last minutes of the game, and really stunned the Emirates. And this was a huge, crazy game. It was so much fun to watch. Are Arsenal vulnerable? I think they are a little bit just because they don't have an out-out striker. I would love to see Gyökeres get more and more minutes. I think that's kind of why he was brought in to be their out-and-out striker, the one scoring a lot of goals, and he just hasn't done that a ton. Now, granted, his hold-up play is very essential to how Arsenal have played this year, and it's done pretty well. I do think, though, that Arsenal still are going to be in this title race for the rest of the season. I don't think you get to 4 points clear of second place Villa and Man City without being a good team. Man United, Michael Carrick has gotten two huge wins against Manchester City and Arsenal, two of the top teams in this league, and it's crazy that he's been able to do it. I would like to see him do this more often. I don't think Man United's locked into a UCL spot. But, if they keep playing like this, there's no reason why they couldn't contend for the Champions League and, get Man United back to where they were. And I think that's kind of what, the ownership wanted, just to see some juice and some aliveness back in this club that looked really rather dead under Ruben Amorim. So it's really cool to see Michael Carrick, learn from his mistakes so far at Middlesbrough and be at the club that he has loved so long, Manchester United, that he played for, and he's now giving them a chance to compete for the Champions League. That's really cool. And I think right now he's undefeated in all the games he's been interim manager for Man United at. So it's really cool to see. I'm really hoping the best for him. Former championship manager who did pretty decently in Middlesbrough until the last couple of seasons. So it's going to be fun to see. Aston Villa, they had an emphatic bounce back from their loss the previous week to Everton, getting a 2-0 win at Newcastle. They're tied on points with Man City for second place, are 4 points behind Arsenal for in the title race, but the goal difference is a huge problem for them with Man City, so they're third right now. It was a huge win to get over a Newcastle team that is in the Champions League round of 16 now. And that's competing for Europe right now in the Premier League. So it's a huge win for Villa to bounce back with. If they had lost the game, I think there would have been serious concerns and questions happening. But now that they've won this, I think it's back to normal scheduled programming and shows how good of a team this Aston Villa is this, from last year, even, who just finished top four. And right now, they're back in the top four again and are showing that they belong. So that's huge. Bournemouth stashed a huge dramatic win. This was such a crazy game as well over the last weekend. They won at the last kick of the game, really, against Liverpool. And Liverpool had come back, tied this game up after being 2-0 down. It looked like Liverpool were going to be the ones to win after getting the equalizer from Sabazalai. A great free kick that Salah rolled to him and he just slotted in the top corner. Um, Liverpool thought they were back in the top four race again and keeping pace with everyone else, and yet Bournemouth at the last second snatch a win. And this is a Bournemouth team that dropped points a lot of the times from winning positions. So it felt like they were going to do it again, but instead they get this huge win that puts them right back in the European races. I think they're only 3 points off the top eight. So now with this win, and it is Bournemouth too inconsistent to try to secure uh, this season from being a disaster compared to last year, or are they, a contender for Europe? I think we need to see more consistency from this team before we can say that Bournemouth are officially back. But it's a huge win to get over Liverpool, who are just starting to round into form. So huge, huge, huge 3 points for Ariel and the Cherries to get at home in the rain against a Liverpool team that wanted and came out with a fire in the second half and desire to win. Um, Raheem Sterling was released on a free yesterday by Chelsea. Huge, huge, huge. He's won 4 titles with different clubs. Um, Chelsea just doesn't have a place for him right now, and now he's a free agent. Right now, reports are saying that he's been in contact with several Champions League clubs who want him. I think that would probably be the better option for him. I don't think right now there's a place in England for him right now that really a contender, which is I think what Sterling wants right now. He wants to go to a contender, someone who he can go to Champions League places with and stuff like that. Um, But it's just crazy that Raheem Sterling is now a free agent after only a few years ago being a key part of the England squad. So very interesting. Um, all right, it's time for the pitch back, the our favorite part of the show, where you, the listener, and the most important part of our show, get to take the mic. Are any questions, hot takes, anything you throw our way? We posted this on social media, Instagram, Facebook, um, and Twitter and TikTok. We posted this, and we got a couple of questions, including one from our good friend to Answer the Call podcast on Instagram. He asked, shout out to Tim from Answer the Call, one of our good friends and really a good friend of the show. Check out their podcast. He's supposedly going to be coming back soon, hopefully. So we're really excited to see that. Um, he asked, "What is our favorite coach coordinator hire so far?" Right now, I'd have to say that Robert Saleh is my favorite hire so far for Tennessee, and the reason why is because he's going to help fix that defense in Tennessee. Right? They weren't a bad defense; they just need someone to help tweak. They have the pieces on defense to be good. They have pieces on offense to be good, but they need just a few tweaks. And Robert Saleh feels like the perfect hire to. And it sounds like he's learned from his mistakes with the Jets because, and this is my favorite coordinator hire as well, they hired Brian Daboll to be the offensive coordinator. And he's brought in his staff from Buffalo and previous stops that he's had along the way, Brian Daboll, I mean. And I feel like Dayball's going to really get a tune out of Cam Ward. Cam Ward did not look bad this season. He looked like a decent, good to good NFL quarterback. And if you can get him on the right track like Dayball did with Josh Allen, I think there's a lot of promise in this Tennessee team. They have $100 million in cap space to spend in the free agency, and I think they will use that. I would not be shocked if they are heavy spenders and get some good guys to really improve this Titans squad and get them out of the basement. So yeah, that's my favorite coach coordinator hire so far. From also our good friends at Three Guys Six Balls podcast, they asked who wins Coach of the Year this year. I think it's hard to not say Ben Johnson. I don't think you can't say Ben Johnson or Mike McDonald. Those have to be the two big options. Maybe Mike Vrabel as well. Those are the three I would have to say. Vrabel, Johnson, or McDonald. But probably knowing how much the Coach of the Year is based off of narrative, I would not be shocked if Vrabel gets it this year, and Johnson just barely misses out just because they went from 4-13 to a Super Bowl. So I would not be shocked if that's kind of where the award goes to. But I wouldn't be shocked if like Ben Johnson did either because of the good season that he's had with the Bears in his first year with Caleb Williams and all that. Some good questions this time, and if you have a question, please drop it on social media. Give us a shout on DMs or anything like that. We're on all the social media pages, so we loved looking forward to hearing your questions, your hot takes, and if we think it's cool, we'll drop it on the show in the pitch back. So can't wait to hear from you because you, the listeners, are our most important part of this show. We would not be doing this if it weren't for you. So, and for that, that is it for this episode of the Pitch Grid. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're on YouTube and watching, like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Listening on Spotify or Apple, a rating or a follow goes a very long way, as well as on Amazon and Audible as well. We really appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back soon with much more chaos commentary and coverage from the world of soccer and the NFL. Until next time, stay sharp, y'all.